Welcome to the pilot edition of the Polarizer Podcast. I'm Benny Bish, and the term polarizer, I guess, is used intentionally because of our guests. We welcome to the Norwell Motorplex, Roland Dane. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, and Paul Morris. You haven't come far to be here, mate.
I haven't come far to be here. I'm excited to be here with you, Benny Bish. I reckon all I want to do is get you to sing the theme tune, bro.
It's not going to happen. It's definitely not going to happen. The wife is the brains of the organisation. The first thing we need to establish is, Roland, what the heck have you been doing with your life? Like, you were known so much as a very, very busy guy. How does a busy guy just go, I'm just sort of stepping back a bit now? Are you still busy and finding other things?
Look, like a lot of people, that whole COVID episode really took a lot of energy out of me. But it also, I'm an old bloke now. I'm a pensioner, and I have to be realistic about what I've got left to do. So I still get involved in GT racing, as many people know. I chair the board at PWR, which I'm very proud of. That's a great Australian success story, and involved in motorsport as well as other areas. And I write columns annoying people where I can. And to be honest, I have still plenty of interaction, with the motorsports world. So it's a pretty well balanced lifetime chapter for me at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to hear. So we're going to get the best out of him at least, Paul. So while he's sort of starting to step back a bit, you look busier than you've ever been.
Yeah, pretty busy. Yes, I think there's a lot of people not doing much after COVID, so I think if you want to hook in, there's plenty of opportunity. So.
And that's probably got something to do with the reason we're here, is because you guys are thinking there's something of a void. The guys at Speed Cafe are thinking there's something of a void of that opinion-based comment, not just on supercars, but what's going on in motorsport generally in Australia and anything that's relevant to what's going on in Australia overseas. So we're going to have a chat about some opinions of what you guys think. We'll probably start with the weekend was a cracker, and you were playing tourist and race fan down at the Australian Motorsport Festival, and you look pretty happy with it.
Yeah, no, I was. The Australian Motorsport Festival at the weekend was a absolutely great event. I'm a bit of an ambassador for it as well, so I'm not going to slag it off. But I don't. Honestly, it was all positive. It was massively bigger than last year, which was the first time since COVID that it had run. Good international presence with people like Gunther Steiner, with David Croft, with Damon Hill, with Valtteri Bottas for the second year, Paddy Lowe, ex-technical director of Mercedes-Benz. So some big international names, because the timing is so good before the Grand Prix, in the lead up to the Grand Prix. People coming a long way across the world, quite happy to come a bit early, get over a bit of jet lag before they go to Melbourne later in the week. And the weather was great, the attendance was great, the atmosphere was great, and the South Australian fans are a real pleasure to interact with. They're so knowledgeable and respectful that I had a ripper time. I couldn't believe it, how good a time I had, honestly. And I didn't even drive a car around the circuit.
Yeah, right.
I still had a great time.
You got to watch bits of the live stream?
Yeah, I was watching the live stream each time the TCR race come on. I flicked over and watched the live stream. No, I'm only taking the piss, but I was watching it in between. I was obviously at Launceston at Symmons Plains for the Speed Series round, but I was watching it. It was cool.
Apparently, like 40,000 streams just on the Speed Cafe site over the 2 days. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it shows people like the history of the sport. We've got a car culture, motor racing culture in Australia, especially in Adelaide. Like, if you ever went to one of the Grand Prix there, it was probably the best time you ever had. The race teams, it was the last round of the year. They always sold off all their merchandise, and all the teams were always getting rid of all their pit gear down pit lane. So it was probably the most popular, fun Grand Prix. Roland would have been there having a good time.
Oh, gee,
That's probably why you like going back to Adelaide. Still probably got a couple of old birds there tucked away somewhere.
I wish they're even older than me now. But I remember going to the Grand Prix, walking through that gate, on your way to the paddock.
Yeah.
And when you'd come from the cold and everything in the UK, you'd walk over there, into the paddock, and there's a bloke selling a cut-up cow on the left-hand side, smashed between a couple of bits of bread, and on the other side there was a bloke selling Foster's. Now, we thought Foster's was a national drink. We didn't actually realise nobody in Australia drank it, but every pub in London sold Foster's, the way they do like Corona or something now. So we walked in and there was a tanker with Foster's in it and a bloke selling cows, cut up cows on the other side. And we thought we died and gone to heaven. And I felt like that about Adelaide ever since.
I get the impression in talking to Adelaideans who they're getting to the point where they're past the grudge of losing the Grand Prix, but that sentimentality, from what you're saying, is still very, very strong.
Yeah, but there is, as Paul said, there's a car culture as well.
Yeah, right.
Well, it was an election issue. They won the election on 100%. Bringing the...
Absolutely.
Where would you see that in?
Yes. Peter Malanoukas won the election on bringing these things back, and it showed how the other guys stuffed up. And but there was a great cross-section of people at the festival. It wasn't just old blokes like me who, remember this or remember that, etc. back in the day. There's a really good cross-section of people. So I think it goes very deep in the South Australian culture, as I feel it does in Queensland as well. But you have to fish where the fish are.
Yeah.
And in Adelaide, there's no shortage of fish.
Yeah, interesting. It's the sort of thing, obviously there was a clash for you, events-wise, sort of thing that you'd go to?
Oh, for sure. There was one of my older BMW M3s was running around and a couple of other supercars there that guys had. Look, and I'm not attached to those things, but a lot of people are. Yeah. It was cool to see it whipping around,
Yeah. It fascinates me, that whole concept of sentimentality and people's attachment to actual cars. You see it across all forms of motorsport where that's the
one
car
you saw when you were a kid, wasn't it?
100%.
Like for me, it's Brock in the Tirana with his arm on the door, That's for me is always what got me passionate about car racing. So it's someone they've seen and they get to actually go and see that car. Yeah. Or if they've got enough money and done well in their life, they've actually bought it and they can drive it. So
it wasn't only the emotive motorsport cars. It was also, when you go and see an F40, they're up close and personal, but not behind a fence. But you can actually go and the young kids can look at it, and then all the people who are a little bit older who had a picture of that on their wall and probably aspire now to owning one if they ever really come good and financially they'll be maybe that's what they'd like to buy. So seeing an Enzo parked next to it, and countless other ones, but right back to I think Peter Harburg has a 250 LM there from the 60s. So there were these superb collections of interesting supercars and hypercars, etc. There, that there was something for everyone. It wasn't just old Formula One cars or old V8 supercars or whatever. It was a combo.
Well, that leads to my next question, because the Supervan, the Ford Supervan, like that's everything. You talk about nostalgia, but those guys are going from strength to strength. Was that? How did that go down when essentially the people are there for sentimentality?
Yeah, if you told people that they come and watch an electric van going around, and there wouldn't have been a lot of interest. But when you've got something that looks the way that does, and then goes, as somebody described it as a giant Dyson, but it is super impressive to look at. And also to see on track. And it was being driven by Liam Lawson.
Oh, did you see his girlfriend after he floored it?
Sorry?
There's a clip there, I think it's on Speed
Oh,
Cafe.
Yeah.
He's driven it into town, he's put his boot into it, and his girlfriend's sitting beside it, and she's like, what the?
Yeah.
Must be impressive.
The thing is a very impressive, cool bit of kit. I remember when they first, I think they built the original Supervan years and years ago, Ford Transit, out of a GT40 or something, right? And put a van body on it, and that was pretty cool back in the day. And there have been various iterations, but this was outrageous, and it was great to have somebody like, again, young bloke with huge talent from this part of the world, across the ditch, but still local to us really, like Liam driving it.
Yeah, very, very cool. Great connection. So obviously a really, really successful event, and it's only going to go from strength to strength, and that's really, really cool. I feel like we are way too composed, you guys. I know you differently to this. It's time to get some opinions out of you, because on the same weekend we had everything happening down in Launceston, as you said before.
Yep,
you call it Launceston, so you're clearly not a local from there. Lonnie, it's Lonnie. Lonnie, yeah. If you say Launceston, people will know that you're from out of town.
It's like Brisbane.
Yeah, exactly right. Lonnie, what's your take on it? Like, obviously that last race was a cracker, but the weekend wasn't without its challenges.
There was obviously a problem with the TCR race where it didn't go half distance, so they couldn't award points. But the race was still a classified race, so no points for the first race, but a reverse grid based on the finishing positions of the first race, which caused some turmoil. Mainly because it was GRM that lodged the protest in. So I think a lot of the competitors, well, I know a lot of the competitors because I race in the Trans Am myself, but they cannot see the difference between GRM as a competitor and ARG as who own the championship. So it's a lot of the time it looks like and feels like they're pissing in their own hot tub and people not wondering why people want to get in it.
Right. Is that your take on it?
Look, I mean, I can see exactly why people would feel that way. Forgetting the rights and wrongs of what rule was broken or wasn't broken, I can see that. I think just looking from the outside and without knowing the full facts of the situation, from the outside, it looked to me, yet again, like Motorsport Australia had failed the competitors at one level or another to run the meeting properly. Different way to last year, but the same thing happened. There were issues last year at the same race meeting, and I think that has to be put right. But because it looked also like people banging nails into the coffin of TCR when you see Tony D'Alberto, rightly or wrongly, pulling out of the last race, and that's what you're reading about from afar. I didn't actually know that the last race was a cracker until 3 people this morning told me that it was a real humdinger. Right. And so I can't wait to watch it later tonight or something. But it doesn't. The immediate takeout is, hang on, you guys are just banging nails into this bloody thing when if it's going to be saved, it needs to be saved, not having that going on. Otherwise, just ditch the thing, move on, get over the 2-litre thing finally, and decide what your primary category is, whether it's Trans Am or GT4 or both. Mm-hmm. But there isn't room in this country for all these things, and there certainly isn't room for Motorsport Australia to keep making mistakes.
Interesting. It's the Speed Cafe Polarizer Podcast, and we're starting to get those polarizing, I guess, opinions now. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think MA have got a responsibility mainly to its members, which is the licence holders and the competitors, and sometimes I feel they look after themselves way more than they look after the people, the membership base. So it feels like that way, but we'll see. A new CEO in town, and he's got to turn the ship around and change it. There seems to be the will and the want to do it. We all need to support them as members to make that happen. But to do that, you've got to point out what's wrong.
We've got to see the evidence.
Yeah.
We've got to see the evidence of change, and all the time people are marking their own homework. You won't get the change that we need.
It's a good point, Roland. So,
but
a race team marks its own homework
and
gets better.
Their sponsors mark their own.
But if you do a proper debrief, you go, what did we do wrong this weekend? How do we make it better?
But we do. Yeah. But the bad ones then stay at the back. The good ones get to the front. When you've got a monopoly.
No, but what I'm saying is, you didn't give them when you ran 888, you didn't bring a consultant in to work out what you were doing wrong.
No. But
you as a leader of that team went, okay, this is what we did wrong. Yeah. Take the emotion out of it. This is what we've got to do better.
Correct. But unfortunately, that for years and years now, that hasn't happened at Motorsport Australia. Yeah. And it needs to happen.
That's what needs to happen.
So it needs to happen. But if they're not doing it, then they need help to get it right. And
I wonder where you could find someone to help them.
I don't know. I was hoping you might be able to step
Well,
in.
this is my point, because obviously my day job, I work for a peak body in Speedway Australia. And so I understand what it's like to be in that situation where you know all of this stuff behind the scenes that you can't tell all the people out there, because it's actually going to be detrimental to the sport and to the industry, because, you know, it's that whole you can't handle the truth thing. It's like, gosh, I'd love you guys to know this, but you don't. And so if you did, you probably wouldn't be throwing stones the way that you're throwing. What would you do if you were in that role? Say you just, I'm sick of retirement. Roland Dane has just been assigned the CEO of Motorsport Australia. What would you do?
Not turn up for the job on day one, because I wouldn't do it. But anyone who does do it, I actually, I admire them for taking the job, because you do put yourself in the firing line. Mm-hmm. But you've got to listen to the real shareholder base, if you like, which is the competitors, and you've got to look back and see each of these events, what's gone wrong, what you take out of them, as Paul said, to debrief them honestly, and to put something right, you have to admit it's wrong. You'll never put it right if you don't admit it wrong. It's wrong in the first place. When you get it wrong, then analyze why and do something about it. But to continually try and hide what's gone on, then won't help you in the end. It only exacerbating the situation. You know, the first pill is the smallest pill.
Yeah, right.
And unfortunately, the pill has now got to the stage where it's very hard to swallow for the competitor base in Australia. So, and I'm not just talking about circuit base. You know, I talk to people in rallying a lot as well, and they'll give you their own catalogue of issues as well. So, I hope that Sunil Vohra, the new CEO, really can get to grips with the culture in Motorsport Australia, and try and take it to a better place. I really do hope that.
Yeah, interesting. I think the Australian psyche fascinates me, right? Australians tend to respond really, really well when someone puts their hand up and just is ugly honest and just goes, hey, well, we're not doing this well.
Yeah, well, we see that when a driver makes a mistake,
100%.
walks down and says, oh, sorry, I messed up, and apologises to the guy, people go, oh, okay, that's all right then. And
look what happened with the cricketers. So, you know, everyone accepted back in, you know, a year later or whatever, Steve Smith, etc. After Sandpaper Gate or whatever, that people will accept. Much better put your hand up.
Yeah.
So that was a dumb thing to do.
For sure.
Because we all make mistakes. You've not made that many mistakes that I can recall.
Well, at the time, I didn't think they were, but looking back at them, they definitely were.
But that's the point, isn't it? It's this whole retro ownership of a mistake where you go, shivers, I thought I was doing the right thing.
It's okay to be wrong.
It's okay to be wrong.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be able to throw the stones. If you were to do that job, the CEO job, what would you do?
Oh, I don't think I'd make a pretty good CEO. I don't think my management style wouldn't probably fit the people that.
How would he go?
You've got to be really careful of. Things need to change, but you still need the and I feel with Sunil, you still need the place to operate. There's still a licence to be held out and race meetings to run. So he's got to get his feet under the desk and work out who's who in the zoo, and then make effective changes and get the right people on board. So that's his job. So, but I'm not in his position. I'm sure he's got challenges we can't see.
100%. And I love what you said before too, that there is a responsibility on the constituents to actually, instead of doing the Aussie thing and just pointing the finger, actually, hey, how can you be a part of the solution?
That's what. You can't fix it if you're not in the club. And basically, we're all members of a car club, and we're all members of Motorsport Australia. So, we should be able to say what's wrong without having a whinge, and be positive and find a way to make things better. So,
but a lot of people have tried. I mean, your father said to me, "You're wasting your time trying to change things." But I still believe that you can.
I think you
try
can
and change things.
I see it's different. Like if you go to America, and there's several different sanctioning bodies over there, but the guy's walking around with his USAC patch on, like he's pretty proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no one walking around the pits with a Motorsport Australia sticker or a patch on their overalls that I'm proud to be a member of that organisation. Right. So, and they've never really looked after the members. They've always looked after themselves, the people in the group, you know, that run that. So once you start looking after the members, it will heal, and people will be proud to be part of that organisation and want to have that Motorsport Australia sticker on their race car.
I would, if you said to me tomorrow, what would you change?
Yep.
Because of the way the stewarding system works, for good or bad in Australia, you know, with 3 stewards at each race meeting, I would go straight out tomorrow and I would replace one of those stewards with somebody with experience, driving, team management, whatever, or both, etc., to come in and sit alongside them. Because I reckon as soon as you introduce somebody with medium or top line experience into those situations, you'll get better decisions coming out of them. You'll get ones that are potentially better thought out. You still have two stewards there who quite often have got a legal quasi-legal background, which is no bad thing. But it desperately needs an injection of real motorsport experience at a high level.
Would you pay them?
Would
you pay them?
I'd probably not, Paul, to be honest. Probably not. I mean, even if you go to Formula One, as you know, the stewards are not paid. Yeah, they get a bottle of red wine each night, as you know, but they're not paid. And even the drivers, the drivers who are part of that setup now are not paid to be.
So you don't want to go full NASCAR where it's our show?
Look, maybe one day. But at the moment, that's it. When you look for a change to bring in now, I would take one of those stewards and say, stay at home and bring somebody else in who is reasonably current, has got... I'd put my hand up and do it tomorrow. Really? Paul would do it tomorrow, where you're not conflicted, at a race meeting where you're not conflicted.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody like a Greg Crick would do it. Somebody like a Stephen Richards would do it. A Stephen Johnson. Right,
Steve Owen.
Steve Owen.
Yeah.
There are people who I believe are passionate enough about, because you've got to be passionate about the sport to give up a weekend here, a weekend there. And I'd change that straight away to try and inject a real competitor's point of view into the process, and therefore try and move forward and get better outcomes. Because that's where a lot of the mistakes are ending up, is either stewards not really taking enough notice of what's going in a race meeting, or when it ends up on their desk, not necessarily handling it the best way.
It's exactly what I thought would happen. We would start to get into concepts and subjects that we never even planned on. But I tell you what, I think we should pick up a little bit more of this. We're going to take a short break. You're on the Polarizer Podcast, and we'll be back. We're going to discuss this idea that stewards, paid, unpaid, there's a lot at stake. We'll catch up with that with these guys after this.
Speedcafe.com, your number one motorsport source for all the latest motorsport news and features. Breaking news, exclusive interviews, unprecedented global motorsport coverage, live event updates, performance motoring news, and video features, all in the palm of your hand, anywhere, anytime at speedcafe.com.
You're with the Polarizer Speed Cafe podcast. Benny Bish, your host here, and we started to talk about this concept of stewards. Hang on. Yeah, you're protesting about something. What have we done wrong?
Well, we're talking about making mistakes in a minute. You guys called the Adelaide Motorsport Festival the Australian Motorsport Festival, so let's just clear that up before we piss everyone off in Adelaide.
I've already offended everyone in South Australia, right, Argo?
To be honest,
you won't get a booking at Gaucho's, mate, if you keep that up.
It probably should be both. Yeah. It's the Australian Motorsport Festival
you're giving it an
the
upgrade.
Adelaide, but yeah, exactly.
Just admit you're wrong, mate. Stop.
No, I was wrong. I was wrong, but I could make myself right.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I embarrassed myself at the weekend big time. There was Chaz Kelly standing there, and I introduced him as Craig Kelly to somebody else because I'd just been talking about...
Who's got more dough?
No, I forgot, because I was talking about Craig Kelly to somebody who's the great missing person from Supercars. Right? It was part of the deal when we sold it to Race, and then unfortunately disappeared off the scene and popped up a year later at Collingwood.
There you go.
And it is I believe, motorsport's loss, let alone Supercars' loss. Anyway, that's just sidetracking. Sorry, Chaz, for getting your name wrong.
Yeah.
I actually had an interesting interaction. We lived in Tassie for 10 years, and my wife and I played the music there was a one-off Northwest Targa rally that just only happened 1 year.
Yep.
We played at it. And anyway, a guy called Neville Harper, a Speedway guy, great mates with Chaz, he says, you want me to get a run with Chaz when he warms the car up tomorrow before the start? You want to go in the F40? I'm like, yes.
Here we go.
So I came out at 8, and I didn't know Chaz at the time. And he's like, Chaz. And he goes, all right, so I won't go very fast around the corners. I'll just go fast in the straights. He said, because I don't want to hurt me, the car, or you in that order. He was just like, okay, you make it real clear. Thanks, Chaz. But how did that happen? What was the conversation around?
No, we were shooting the breeze as you do at something like the Adelaide Motorsport Festival.
Yes.
Around the cars, and then somebody else came up who hadn't. I think it was Craig Sutton who hadn't
There you go. That's where you went wrong. A Craig.
No, because I'd been talking about Craig Kelly.
It was still a Craig.
But yeah, too many Craigs and not enough Chazes. So it was just my little bit of Alzheimer's creeping in or something. I don't know, old age catching up with me. And when I was making a point to Vern Schuppan the next day about how I'd made a tit of myself over it, and he said, don't worry, I do it all the time. Right. And it's just old age. But Vern has got 15 years on me, so he's entitled to make a few cock-ups, but I'm not. So I gave myself a slap for that.
That's totally fine, John. Oh, good. Okay, we talked about this, or we started on that subject of, we just want to round this off. In regards to stewards, the most expensive hobby in the world, if it's a hobby, very, very big, expensive industry we're in, but you're in the hands of people who aren't getting paid. Is that the way it should be? Or like you're suggesting, the whole NASCAR thing, everyone's paid, everyone's got a role.
In America, most people are paid, even the rescue, and they just get it done. And there's normally a race director or something that will just make a clear-cut decision. So raced in both sides of it. Having that independence of the is good as well. You always should get a fair hearing. Sometimes I don't think you do, but you should do. So our system's always had that independent governing body. And
it's grown out of horse racing and everything, etc. The stewards and things, and it's whether it's ultimately the fix going forward, I don't know. There's a lot more technology available today to both the stewards, but also the competitors, and crucially, the people who are watching. So if it's a spectator-orientated sport, whether it's motorsport or anything else, and spectators can clearly see that something actually was incorrectly adjudicated, whether it's on a soccer field or a cricket
speeding
field.
that process up. The ball sports are not letting things go to the next day. They'll go to the video referee straight away. And
the world's changed, doesn't it?
They want to know. They don't want to...
Look how good it was at the Australian Tennis Open this year, where there were the judge, the calls were made straight away. Well, there were no challenges because you could see straight away, right? The Hawkeye was straight onto it, and the call that the ref was making was based on Hawkeye, not based on a person standing at the end of the line adjusting his or her glasses to whether it was in or out. So you couldn't argue with the technology, and it sped the whole process up. Yeah,
maybe we should have the drivers. If you get a bump and run, you get a drive-through, you can challenge it in the middle of the race. You have 3 challenges. And get to the end of the race and use them all up.
On the last couple of laps. Well, people do that with curb strikes, as you well know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, go through the Gold Coast, you got 5 up your sleeve, you go flat out over turn 2 and 3.
Dave Reynolds, smart guy, pretends he's the silliest bloke in pit lane, but he's actually the smartest.
Straight through.
Yeah. Straight through.
Yeah.
Can't get me last lap.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big load to carry. That's just my concern. It's a big load to carry when you've got these really, rich, potentially egotistical car owners, car drivers breathing down your neck, and you're just a volunteer. That's a big load to carry when there's potentially no finance.
Yep. Good. Absolutely. And but that's why it needs to be done properly as well.
Yeah.
Regardless. And if we can improve the process by tweaking it, which I believe we can, then we should.
Yeah, okay. Let's step into the world of supercars. Heading on into the Grand Prix this weekend. It's been a checkered history of supercar involvement at the Grand Prix. Just give us an overview from your point of view of what you've seen over the years.
Oh, I mean, my first recollections of Australian touring cars at the Grand Prix were in Adelaide.
Oh, here we go.
And I loved that. I remember in 1990, I was there with Derek Warwick. He was driving for Lotus with a Lamborghini engine that was about 4 meters long. That was just the engine.
What was your role?
And chief helmet carrier.
Right.
And I was watching the cars out of the hairpin, coming up the pit wall, the touring cars, and Scafie and Gentleman Jim were in the new Skyline R32s. And we just started timing the Lotus Lamborghini Formula One car in their sessions from when we could see it coming into view around the end of the pit wall to next to the actual Lotus pit. I can tell you the Nissan was faster every time. As it, four-wheel drive, admittedly, but Jesus, it came by making this fantastic noise, etc. I went straight back to the UK, got on the blower to Japan, and got one sent over as soon as possible.
Really?
Right? I just was so blown away by it. But I loved going and watching, as a lot of people did, and they still do. People coming from around the world to the Grand Prix who
see the V8s.
Yeah, and they want to watch, as you say, nowadays, the V8. I mean, that obviously wasn't all V8. There were people like you in M3s and things as well.
Yep.
But for the last 30 years, it's been V8s, and they come over and watch them, as I did. Then that was all non-championship for a long time. And in 2007, we felt as supercars, and I say we because the teams were very involved at the time, and led by Tony Cochrane, said, well, we're not actually getting enough money for the value that we're giving to the Australian Grand Prix Corporation for participating in the event, especially as a non-championship. So we had a Mexican standoff, and in 2007 we didn't go there. So we returned in.
It affected their ticket sales too, didn't it?
Yep. we went back.
Yeah.
We went back in 2008 and got a big sack of gold to go there. The problem is that obviously upset a few people in doing that, and they were forever then out to find ways of reducing that sack of gold, which they did over the coming years. Then when the broadcasters changed, we went to being championship points rounds. But we were still important to the show, and we had our own pit lane, as you know, which was a great initiative by Tony Cochrane and Ron Walker to put that in there, which was a real point of difference and gave us the flexibility to have pit stops and have hospitality at a different price point, above those, which worked for everyone. Worked for the teams, worked for the AGP Corporation, so it was a win-win. But the writing was on the wall in terms of the overall relationship once Formula 2 and Formula 3 were coming to Australia. Now, this will be the second year, and unfortunately, supercars are back in the paddock where we used to be years and years ago, back on the grass. But it sounds like without the same fan access as we used to have back then. It sounds as though supercars will be set apart without fans being able to get up close and personal with the cars, which that doesn't sound good to me.
So does that mean then that supercars doesn't belong at the AGP anymore, Paul?
Oh, if it was me, I just wouldn't go.
Yeah, right.
I always thought the Grand Prix gave some local people, whether it was when I was a kid, it was a Formula Ford or a Formula Holden, or you got to race on the big stage. So by having F2 and F3 there, it's taken taken that away from local motorsport. So I think Motorsport Australia have got a bit of a role to play here and go, if we're going to have the Grand Prix here, do we need to have that to make sure that local motorsport still gets to go on the big stage at some stage? So it's obviously a deal being done at a lot higher level, but it hasn't thought about a lot of Australians.
Right.
Yeah. That compete, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned before about it being potentially like a sideshow, and then the tickets went down as a result. Formula One's bigger than that now, isn't it?
It is. Let's be honest. It is. It's whether you call it the drive to survive effect, whatever. Formula One is bigger than that, and Supercars is no longer the draw card that was needed. Yeah. It might still be a bit of one. I don't know. I couldn't quantify that, but I think it'll come down to after this coming Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. You know, it needs to be looked at, and Supercars need to decide whether they're better off there or not, frankly, and weigh up the pros and cons.
So Supercars as an organisation, they make that decision. But what does that mean? What do you think the teams would think from an exposure point of view?
The teams used to like going there because they could service their commercial partners at a pretty high level.
Right, okay.
And if you no longer have the ability to do that, why would you bother going?
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So it's more than just whether we want to be in front of a crowd.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it is, and it always has been. You know, it's always been. It has been a great commercial opportunity for teams. Yeah. But if if the race times are not brilliant, or the number of laps is cut, or you get a puncher and you're out of it, and it's a point scoring race or whatever, these things all come to play, and in the decision. So I think it's got to be reviewed afterwards and see where it lands. I know a lot of the people who work in Formula One. Yeah, they'll be disappointed if it's not life-changing for them, but they'll be disappointed if they don't roll up and then be able to put their head over the fence and watch Supercars going round.
Watch the V8s.
Sorry, V8s going round.
Well, that's what they call them.
I know, I want to pick up on that, because there's just in the last couple of days, Gunther Steiner refers to them as V8s. You said before, RD, that doesn't matter, we can't shake that tag. Is that a bad thing? Should we just go back to what we known as?
I think you should, yeah. RD was probably instrumental in getting rid of it, because when he was bringing the V6 turbo in, which at that time that's all GM was developing, and you had to go that way. But if we've got V8s, let's call them V8. You talk to NASCAR drivers, anyone, they call them V8 supercars. Mm-hmm. And we say supercar. You see it with Shane conducting interviews now, so you watch podcasts he goes on and they go, oh, yeah, man, you're a V8 supercar driver. And he starts talking about supercars, and they're like, what?
Yeah, Lamborghinis, Ferraris.
There's some confusion. So call it what it is.
I think you're right, Paul. And you're quite right. I was a part of dropping the V8 prefix because the industry was.
But you got to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, but at the time it was right, because Ford and Holden were putting so much money into the sport.
For you, it was good.
It was for me,
and you had enough clout to sway everyone.
but
not bad.
Yeah,
that's true.
But the fact is that both Ford and Holden were interested in the V6 turbo route, and look what they did with the GTE car that Ford raced, and the Ford GT from 2016 or whatever it was until COVID time that Ganassi ran in the World Championship and in IMSA. That was a V6, right? It wasn't a V8. And that engine was what they were talking about. Would that end up in a supercar?
What he's trying to say, for him to keep ragging heaps of money out of GM, he had to go V6 turbo.
And then they changed their mind overnight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And decided they didn't need it, and the V8s weren't the Antichrist.
The V8, see, I got him.
Sorry?
I've got you.
No, the V8 engines were no longer the Antichrist.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but for a while they were.
Sure.
And not just with them. I mean, look where Mercedes have ended up with a C43 with, I don't know, a sewing machine under the bonnet or something. It's not a V8. Do people want them in the same way? No. But the reality is the whole industry thought the V8 was a dirty word, moved away from it. Well, now I think there's a realization that actually it's not a dirty word. That people still like V8s, whether they're in Europe driving an Audi RS6 or an old model E63 or C63, or out here, driving a Mustang or whatever.
It's got the sound. It's got all of that. It's probably just a fear of being attached to the bogan element. Is that what it is, you think?
I don't think so. They sound good. They look good. You go to a sprint car race, the V8s, people listen to them. They say, you can hear it. You know what it is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
They can tell you what engine's in it.
Yeah.
And we might just end up running a car that's a generic body with a generic V8 engine and have no manufacturer reliance one day. Just could be like a road course version of a sprint car.
Sure. Yeah. Where it's just, there's no makes, there's no models, there's no nothing.
I'm going to watch the V8s.
Yeah, exactly right. It just becomes generic. It's an interesting
When you watch
topic.
a sprint car, you don't know what chassis is in it or what engine.
100%. And nor does it
And they
matter.
are different engines.
Yeah.
Now,
Sprint
but
cars.
Nor does it matter. All right, we're going to take a short break and we continue on here with this polarising discussion as we talk about supercars here on the Speed Cafe Polarizer Podcast.
Speedcafe.com, your number one motorsport source for all the latest motorsport news and features. Breaking news, exclusive interviews, unprecedented global motorsport coverage, live event updates, performance motoring news, and video features all in the palm of your hand, anywhere, anytime at speedcafe.com.
You're with the Polarizer Podcast, thanks to Speed Cafe. And we've got Paul Morris, the dude, here with polarising. You haven't been that polarising today. I think you've been really quite, relaxed.
relaxed. Well, if you've driven halfway across America with him in a police car with no registration.
Yeah, right. Right. It's almost like I want it wrong.
I'm pretty
relaxed. This story? What is this story? We can't stop
There's
at
another story for another time. There's,
Right.
Maybe we'll do a special podcast about the trip across from Los Angeles to Austin to Kota, via Las Vegas.
Road trips with RD and the dude. I could see that working. That's a treat. All right, let's get back to this thing before that. We were talking about the Grand Prix, supercars, V8 supercars. I knew you were going to pull me up. V8 supercars presence at that. It's questionable. Does Formula One need us anymore? All of those sorts of things. Let's say that the consensus was we're done. Supercars doesn't have a home at the Grand Prix. Big loss. What would you do differently? How do you fill that hole on the calendar?
Yeah, for me, it's go back to a track that you can make some atmosphere, fill it full of people, pack it to the rafters.
Like a country track?
It could be. I always like Malala.
Okay.
Ideally, if I could go anywhere, it'd be Lakeside.
Oh, yeah, please.
But if you wanted to put on a cool race, you'd go to Lakeside. But NASCAR have their short tracks, their long tracks. So we need to take a bit of approach in that and have like a short track race where you roll up, drop the tailgate, let them loose, fill the joint to the rafters, put on a good show for one night or a day and try and run an event that can wash its face with the ticket box.
Yeah, interesting. So just basic old school promoting.
Yeah, old school promoters where you're not relying on everyone else's money.
Yeah.
That the show stands on its own 2 feet, which one day that'll come home to roost as well. That's another topic. But we can do that on our doorstep at Queensland Raceway.
It would be good.
You can light the joint pretty easily, right? Ring up Peter Zebras, get some generators and some lights and everything, get them, he'd probably do a deal.
Oh, how many people they'd have out there for that CMC festival on the weekend?
Oh,
right?
yeah, massive. Yeah.
So as you said before, fish where the fish are.
Yeah, and you could try another track layout out there. Now Tony Quinn's got it operational on a couple of different levels. You could chuck in some stuff like that. You could make it so that you turn up, you got minimal practice, etc., and then you're straight into the gig. As much racing as possible. I think there's
Camping.
Yep, there's scope. There's scope for doing different things but fish where the fish are, as I said earlier. Yeah, that's whether it's a Malala, or whether it's a Queensland Raceway.
When you say that, it's ready to go, isn't it?
Queensland Raceway.
Yeah.
You just get on with it.
You just get on with it.
So what was done at SMP with the night race and flames and all of those cool things, that's heading in the right direction, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the opening event of this calendar year for V8s, V8s,
Wow.
should have been at Sydney Motorsport Park, under lights, fireworks and everything. Great time of year to have it. The weather pretty good. You could have done it on a weekend where you haven't got footy playing at the wrong time for you
That
and
weekend
everything.
would have had, Blink 182 and Taylor Swift, so it wouldn't have worked that weekend because that whole precinct would have been chockers.
But choosing the right time to be there and doing it under lights, to me, that's what should have been done, because as we referred to around the Grand Prix, all the teams have got commercial partners. How many of them activated at Bathurst? Almost none.
No.
At Sydney Motorsport Park, they would have all been out there, right? Under lights, has been proven in the past. What a good show it is. When the racing's good there, it's good. And, people slag it because the crowds aren't always that good, etc. Coco gave it a hard time for years. But race tracks in Australia are in short supply. And we need to use those permanent circuits properly. And that one's fully lit, ready to go. You haven't even got to get Premier Hire in to sell your lighting or rent your lighting for the weekend.
It's been done to death too much. We used it too much through COVID, but SMP.
But that's now part.
Well, so let's go to QR.
Well, both of them. But we got to go to both of them, Paul. I'm talking about the opener. We got to go to both of them and more. And more. We've got to realise that we're not going to be able to go and have street tracks forever. While we can, great, fantastic. While we can go to the Gold Coast, brilliant. Adelaide, etc. But Motorsport Australia needs to be also promoting not Formula One tracks, permanent Formula One tracks, but Grade 3 tracks. That's what we need, and we could desperately have a need really of 3 or 4 more in Australia.
Because the reality is the grassroots of circuit racing is not going to be racing on a street circuit, right? So if you don't have the other circuits around that are their permanent circuits, the Morgan Parks and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you look what happens at QR at the moment, that's a home for a lot of people just besides circuit racing.
Yeah.
You've got the drifting, and I think that drift Missouri's coming up the next couple of weeks. That's massive. There's people doing cruise laps. There's roll racing. There's a big car culture, and you can't do it on the road anymore. So as that shift happens, people are going to need permanent facilities to get their rocks off.
Yeah, right.
Like outside Townsville. Drive at NT
Exactly.
Outside Townsville, a great example.
It's all built. All we've got to do is get a road into the place. So.
Yeah. What is the update up there though? Everything's looking pretty decent. They have a track surface issue.
No, it's all down, all go. So there's the local council have just got to build the road to get into the place now. So
is there resistance there, or
they said they were going to do it. So
okay,
if they don't, there might be a change in the mayor or the councillors pretty soon. I think there might have already been one.
The best time to optimise these situations is in the lead into a state election.
100%. 100%.
But that facility would be great. Yep. It's on the ground. It's not like going to the bend, but it's what the people up there need. Something they can use. That's not ridiculously expensive to maintain because it's a not run by a non-for-profit.
Yeah.
So
those guys have been working for 2 decades on getting that set up. I mean,
one bloke's been pushing it.
Yeah.
One bloke's been pushing it really hard forever, hasn't he?
Yeah, Pat Driscoll, which he deserves a lot of credit for making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there enough permanent circuits compared to, as you said before, the amount of street circuits that we've got? I mean, obviously there is that whole model when it comes to taking motorsport to the next level, is that if you're really serious about it, you take the product to the people instead of expecting the people to come to the product, right? So street circuits give us that. But is the balance right?
Yeah, but the problem with street circuits, then you're beholden to government money too much. Right. You're beholden to changing trends. You go back to when the circuit on the Gold Coast was first laid down. Main Beach was a place where Melburnians had bought an apartment for $100,000 that they came up and used occasionally. Now it's full of full-time residents all over the age of 70 or whatever. Are they the people who want cars going round and round? Maybe not. And so things change. It's not good or bad. They just change. Yep. And permanent circuits at least guarantee you venues for the foreseeable future. And look at WA. They've talked about having another circuit there for years and years, top line circuit. They've got more money than they know what to do with. Why isn't there one over there? In New South Wales, in Victoria, the need is there for at least one more circuit in both those places. Motorsport Australia should be leading the charge in trying to facilitate the building of not super fantastic circuits that, like, the Shahins have done a brilliant job at the Bend. Don't get me wrong, fantastic, but there doesn't need to be a Bend standard, right? Yeah, a QR standard, a Taupo standard, like in New Zealand, for instance, or whatever, that's fine. It's very usable.
It's right for 95% of the people that are going to use it.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And you can make some money, but when you open the gate.
Yeah. Your investment's not so great that you can't get a return on it, because there's plenty of uses of circuits other than the likes of us tearing up the tarmac racing. For training facilities, corporates, testing, etc.
Cycling.
Yeah.
You can't get on a track in Europe sometimes. It's full of bike riders.
Yeah.
Well, Yas Marina was when we turned up to do the ALMS race there the end of January. We had to wait for the cyclists to get off the track. Yeah, there's some big show going on there.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So the balance is we need more of these circuits. But there's a lot of them. I mean, we referenced the one in Queensland. There's Collie Motorplex in Perth, which is south of Perth.
Right.
Are they not being utilised enough?
Don't know. I haven't been there, but
Right.
I haven't been to that venue, I've heard that it's not really suitable, for instance, for a national a national category such as V8s to go there. Yep. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'd love to be proved wrong, but when you're over on that coast, it'd be great to do two events while you're over there.
Yeah.
Go to the north area where
the Western Swing.
What do they call Barbagallo now? What's the track called?
Wanneroo, is it?
Wanneroo.
The suburb is.
Back to being Wanneroo.
Is it?
Racetrack. Well, it was called Barbagallo for years, wasn't it?
Yeah, through the sponsorship.
So back to being Wanneroo Raceway. So now going to there, and then a week later going 100 kilometres south or something would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If there was somewhere down and kill two birds with one stone over on the west coast. Huh?
Yeah, we hear that a lot in the speedway world. Is that the Perth Motorplex is doing amazing things? Bunbury's good. I think there's 26 speedways throughout the whole of Western Australia. But it's massive. I mean, there's 100 Speedway Australia affiliated venues across Australia. But there is that whole thing of, man, the biggest names in the elite levels have got to go across the Nullarbor. I mean, that is a massive, massive diesel exercise. And same. If you could do the same with circuit racing, where you've got multiple places to go. That would be absolutely huge. Do you feel like you've... I don't feel like you guys have been that polarising today.
Jeez. Really?
We don't always disagree.
I'm worn out.
No.
Well, a big thank you. I really appreciate it. Any closing thoughts on... I think we've covered about 6 or 7 subjects today.
No, just... I mean, honestly, I'm thrilled to be able to talk about something really positive in the Adelaide Motorsport Festival. Mm-hmm. I really am. Such a great event. I loved it, and can't wait to go back there next year. In the meantime, looking forward to Australian Grand Prix, not just V8s, but every aspect of it, plus MotoGP's back on track at the weekend, and NASCAR and Xfinity are on at COTA, and Shane Van Gisbergen should be taking part in both. So give us all something to watch, I hope.
Do you think it's going to be a new Australian interest in NASCAR like the years of Marcus being around there? Do you reckon it'll go back up again?
Probably more because of the social media and presence, and you can click on Fox and Co and watch the Xfinity and the Cup races now. So
yeah,
I know I always struggle to get to work on time on a Monday now. So
yeah,
if you know someone in the race, you tend to watch it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's I guess that whole thing of it's Australasia that we
Yeah.
try and claim. It's us, everybody in the down under. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Coming to you from the Norwell Motorplex is old mate there as well. Stick it up. Benny Bish signing off for you for this, the pilot episode of the Polarizer Podcast. Tune in next week when we'll just set fire to these guys and see where it takes us.